Hello there, and welcome back to War Thunder. So roughly a month ago, Gaijin released the Leviathans update and brought to every nation at the top the very most famous battleship that is left to be implemented for each nation. I also gave you a first impressions video, and then I had a major break due to vacation. But today, for your pleasure, as you can see, I am playing the Bismarck to its strength. I will have a very good result, and I will talk about the changes, some of them that were made during the update or since the introduction of the update, to be a bit more precise, and also talk about one factor that I think is really important, that I'm actually always paying close attention to, but when it comes to talking about it in gameplay, I feel like I've let you guys down in really bringing home the message how important damage control is. So the big news out of the front: the Bismarck is my personal favorite of this update. It has to do with it being really difficult to bring down, and that has to do with it being favored for the close quarters matches that we have in War Thunder due to the very effective, deeply sloped and rather thick turtleback that is behind a reasonably thick belt. And then we also have 15-inch guns, 380 millimeters, and they are, in my opinion, a bit lackluster when it comes to the raw penetration. And I think that this is artificially weak, and this is really surprising, because the first two premiums that Gaijin will sell you for a fortune, and that being the Sevastopol, the Soviet-Russian 7.3 quote-unquote battle cruiser of rank 6, and the German quote-unquote battle cruiser, the Gneisenau of 7.7 of rank 6, you know, they feature the very same guns with the very same ammunition. Less of them, 6 twin turrets in terms of compared to 8, but this is one of the reasons why the Bismarck has then a battle rating of 8.3 and 7.3 or 7.7 respectively. So the Bismarck finds itself also very often playing versus the top dogs, and then you have 15-inch guns that have a really high rate of fire. Your reload isn't really that long, to be honest, and this is really coming together very nicely with the game mechanics. And today I'm talking a bit more about the gameplay. I'm talking also about very important factors that I usually do not talk about, but I play around it a lot. And that is the damage control mechanisms. And I've talked to a few people, and I was kind of shocked of how people do not even know the basics, and how you can get really into trouble if you use them incorrectly, and how much better you fare if you just use them appropriately, if you get the max out of this. And while we already see massive advantages when it comes to air battles and ground battles, when it comes to the crew skills actually affecting your survivability, in naval forces it's a bit different, but honestly it might be even more so the case. And this is what I try to point out in this battle today. So we are on New Zealand Cape, and I wanted to go to the central island and just not rush into the enemy team and do a glorified death ride with a Bismarck. No. I'm just sitting here and try to shoot up everything that tries to get into B, literally cutting down their numbers and coming on top of it, having good result. And in this I succeed. I do not play flawlessly, but I play good enough that I have a really good result. So first servo out on the Yamato. It's a ranging servo, and yep, that was the correct range. The Yamato is such a rewarding target. You remove really big guns really easily, and I kind of feel sorry. While it is, I think, a problem with the overall armor design, historically speaking, I think the game mechanics also do the ship no favor. So this is where I see then also a team of an enemy Congo class, and I think that's also a Bismarck coming around, and the Congo is the ship in front, so I literally have to shoot through it to hit the Bismarck, so we should prioritize here the Congo class to remove it, but we'll see how it goes. I found them really difficult to take down, not to damage, not to disable, but to actually sink Congo class, especially the bots. So yeah, where to begin? So by reducing the distance to the target, you overcome the one big weakness of the Bismarck, and that's the rather low penetration value of the AP shell of the Bismarck, which otherwise is really well. And the difference to, for example, the penetration values of the Italian Roma with its similar caliber shell that is not too different is just insane. So I think the Italians have too much penetration power and the Germans have not enough. And remember, two expensive premiums that Gaijin is selling you have the same guns. So by shortening the distance, you kind of overcome this, and you also play the Bismarck to its strength, and where every other battleship in the game then has a disadvantage of the new battleships. Because the armor is then just not gifted with another turtleback, or that turtleback isn't that great. So then you just can play to your strength. But you will receive damage, and managing the incoming damage, that is really the key to surviving longer. Now there's always that one freak shell that can blow you up. There is always unforeseen things happening. Single shot to a Yamato, yes, that was again the correct distance, thank you very much. Because you have penalty mechanics webbed into the overall aspect of damage controlling, and you have to prioritize of managing one type of damage at a time, and also when you bring your crew to starting the damage control. And it's fundamentally different from other games where you press a button and all the damage is gone, and then you have a time of somewhat immunity to certain types of damage. And here in War Thunder, you have to really manage it. So if you repair something, or you extinguish a fire, or you just pump out the water or leak a seal, and you fire your guns, you have an increased reload. So you have a reload penalty because you fired your guns while you do some sort of damage control. And here's the key factor. If you shoot and then start the repair, you have the minimum reload. So for example, one of your secondary batteries is damaged and you want to repair it, or your AA is knocked out and an aircraft is coming in, but it's still a bit out, but you have an opponent that you have to gun down, then just simply wait for the reload to be complete, shoot your salvo, and then start the repair. And your repair then should be finished, at least when it comes to battleships, that you can again end the repair cycle before you have to shoot again. And so you keep the guns firing, you put pressure on the enemy, and you hit them and they have to deal with the same damage penalties. And depending on who you shoot, it's extraordinary insulting for them when you hit them over and over again in the barbettes. You start fire, you force them to interrupt the repair, because fire damage, especially in the barbettes, has to be absolutely prioritized regardless of what else you're doing. And while Gaijin has tuned down the damage effect and the short-term explosions, overall barbette fire will still damage the magazines, and when it's the shells, your ammunition is gone, right? If it's the powder charges, then you are gone, because then it's a major magazine detonation, and you know that kills ships. So when it comes then to flooding, well, the first cycle of repair is just sealing the leaks and then pumping out the water. So let's say you get hit by a torpedo and you flood really fast, and it's that kind of major hit that opens a big leak. You have to prioritize it in order to stop the flooding, and also you have to pump out the water in order to get the ship straight up again, because this might also affect the effectiveness of your armor layout, either lifting the weak underbelly out of the water, which easily then can be shot, or you just angle the armor in such a way that somebody can shoot even through your deck, or negate the effect of the turtleback, something like this. Now, the other major aspect is, if you have to extinguish a fire and you have to seal a leak, you still have to decide for yourself which one to prioritize, because if you have two damage controls running at the same time, you have a huge penalty time, and that not just only increases the time for extinguishing the fire, but meanwhile the damage still ticks in, and it also takes longer to seal the leak. So if it's a minor fire on an AA emplacement, in this case you have to prioritize the leak if you have been hit by a couple of torpedoes and you're in severe danger of sinking. Then you can let the AA installation burn out. It's a dangerous game because it can spread to other smaller magazines, for the secondaries or the AA. And always extinguish a fire if possible, except for the cases where the special situation asks for it to be prioritized by another thing. So, as you can see, I'm sitting here behind the island and I'm shooting at whatever comes around, and here is an Amagi, and the Amagi is a dangerous ship because it beats your DPM quite a bit. And so I'm aiming for what would be the Q turret with British ships, and we got it. Beautiful. So when you know how damage affects you, you can also guess how it affects other players. I'm not talking about bots or AI ships, I'm talking about players, because they have to deal with the same problems. So if you have a ship that has just two frontal turrets like some of the French battleships, then you just aim over and over at the frontal firing group, and even if they are perfectly angled or even reverse angled, you knock out their firepower, and they only have two turrets to fire from. And if they then get damaged in terms of the barbette or knocked out completely over and over again, this is absolutely building up the damage, and you start fires over and over again, and at some point they will burn down even if you do not hit the magazines. That's the theory. When it comes to ships like an enemy Bismarck, you also have to prioritize the firing groups so that you reduce the incoming damage, that you still start fires, and so when you have the better aim, you should prevail. Now this is really important because in a 1 versus 1 you can soak up some damage, right, if it's not critical damage, but not all of it. And the skills of your crew slightly deteriorate over time if you have less and less crew, right? So with this you can now observe what I try to do, and yeah, another advantage of the Bismarck is that it has really good precision on the main artillery, which is nice and overcomes a little bit of the problems with the lack of penetration, but not with the lack of bad aim, right? Or the bad aim that I have, and also the issues with the server. And when you have somebody that takes on a lot of water, we have to talk about this, because usually you would think that it's best to pump out the water, but for some ships, if they get flooded in the right places, the water acts as then perfect armor and where you then can all of a sudden no longer hit vital parts of their ship, like an ammunition store. So you can actually use the damage control to your advantage in this case if you take on enough water and you settle on the keel, right, like you do not list to one side or another dramatically, then you can just stop the flooding but stop pumping out the water. Now here's a really important thing that I forgot to mention earlier. How do you play around with the damage controls? Well, first thing is, do not put them on automatic. That's number one. Number two, prioritize. Number three, how to interrupt one or another form of repair simply by holding down the button, and then at the end of it, it stops. And also the crew skills really matter, and so the expert qualification already brings with it huge advantages, but also if you prioritize damage control, the fire extinguishing, that really makes a difference, as well as the breach repair. The unwatering time does not have to be prioritized that much, in my opinion. But fire extinguishing absolutely has to be a vital role, and especially if you have some top tier battleships, a lot of other people also invest a lot of either silver lines or straight up gold needles into upgrading their ships and their crews. And you know, top tier being top tier, what it always was, what is somewhat competitive, right? And this is another point that I observed. Since the very hype at the very start of the update, it has significantly cooled down again. So again, 3/4 of my team consists of bots, and at least Gaijin has mixed other ship types in rather than what we had before. And yeah, we also have longer queue times again, and I think that the damage effect of the fire in the barbette fire has been reduced to, I'd say, an acceptable level, right? It was outright ridiculous, and I do not really think that this was the wisest move from Gaijin to implement the update in the state that it was. But we are criticizing this since 2012, and me in particular since 2013, and ever since I do YouTube videos, right? But that's just what you have to live with when playing War Thunder. Sometimes it's just good to keep a certain distance from the game and come online a couple of days or weeks later when Gaijin has, taken the edge off the issues. So, and this is why it just plays into the Bismarck's role, right? We have close quarters combat, sometimes even right from the spawn. When you spawn 8 to 9 kilometers away from your opponent in a ship that was designed to fight at a significantly longer distance than this, and especially if you're a Yamato, you regularly get blown up before you even can swing around your turrets. And I predicted this years ago, and here we are. And I find this a little bit of a problem. Gaijin could fix this, and New Zealand Cape is actually a good example, because both teams, through the smart placement of islands to the ratio of the spawns, actually prevents here, when it comes to the heavier ships, actually them shooting right at the start, so you can sort yourself out. You can bring yourself into formation if you want to. You can sort out the traffic jam, and then you just can choose where to go and how to engage the opponents. It's not so good of a map for destroyers, I think, but for cruisers and battleships, you can actually make decisions that matter. And again, if you play around with the game mechanics, if you really understand them, I have several guides out there. I have an aiming guide that is still valid in its core principle. and the setup. I think I have ammo guides out there. I'm not quite sure. I think I made a survivability guide as well. If not, let me know in the comment section if you want to see one. And what I've done here was playing by the strength of the Bismarck, and we had great success so far. We still have 37% of our crew. I could have angled better. I could have managed my ship better. I should have stayed a little bit further back. But overall, it just has panned out quite nicely. And I think that this is something that I really like about the Bismarck. The short reload of 22.7 seconds means that even if you have to extinguish a fire and you fire than your guns, then you still have shorter reload than most other battleships. You have 4 turrets instead of 3 or 2 as some other ships, so you don't lose a third or half of your reload and only a quarter. And if you play correctly, you still have some serious firepower. The turtleback keeps you alive. It's just a wonderful experience as far as big battleships go. And I also like the idea that it you have to shorten the distance in order to make the guns really effective. Now, versus ships of lower battle rating, it's quite obvious what a monster this ship is, because you have absolutely no problem dealing with them thanks to your combination of good accuracy, good shell characteristics like deep penetrating into the enemy guts, big charge, the fuse delay. It just works up really nicely together with your precision and reload. It is just fun to play, and that makes a huge difference to ships like the Yamato. Big name, huge disappointment. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed me talking you through the idea of the management of the damage control. And if you like this, please give this video a like with it, subscribe if you want to see more, share this video with your friends, and as usual, we will see each other on the battlefields, in the skies, and on the waves of War Thunder.